That's almost in the DNA of capitalism to take anything and make it into money-making venture. From the Quran, we know that every deed outlives you, especially the good deeds. Just by being human, we are automatically making an impact on the world. The question is just whether it's a good impact or a bad impact. You can make references to the Quran about how the earth remembers, right? You do khidmah to serve humanity. No, actually, not just humanity, to serve creation. So khidmah just means service. Good character is not just to have good intentions, it's to take action. It gives us courage, and courage is one of the characters we need to improve towards, because if there's one thing we can strive that's common to all the prophets and messengers in the Quran, it's that courage to stand on what is right, is right. So what I am saying is, you can have a Muslim business and a Muslim platform tribally, right?
Yes,
because you haven't, it might as well not be a Muslim. It doesn't really matter that it's a Muslim that owns it in that sense.
Okay, Bismillah. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to another episode of the Muhsinaire podcast. Today we have again Dr. Bilal Bugaje, and this is the third in the series. We'll be talking about the third pillar of Muhsinaire, that is impact. So Dr. Bilal, welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll jump right in. So when you think about impact as like a term or a philosophy or an idea, what does it mean to you personally?
Okay. Assalamu alaikum. Yeah, I'm glad to be back. Yeah. Okay, so what I think about when I think of impact, I'm going to go on a bit of a rant. I've been interested in how what I would call Islamic concepts have been co-opted by other ideas or other agendas. For example, usually you would have capitalism all over whatever it is that does the co-option, because that's almost in the DNA of capitalism to take anything and make it into money-making venture, where the money-making aspect, instead of making it sustainable, it's focused on increasing unlimited growth of profit. So an example would be, of course, there would be like how capitalism has hijacked maqasid, and sometimes even tyranny and injustice have used maqasid, the maqasid of Sharia, which are the objectives or goals of the Sharia, to justify what they are doing. Another good one is amana. Amana has been co-opted by corporate anti-truancy. So when corporations don't want you to come late, they are easy to use the word of amana or the concept of amana. And another one, interestingly, is ihsan. Ihsan, I think, has also been to some extent co-opted by the productivity industry. Given this background, I would want to do something here. I hope I'm able to do it successfully, inshallah. It's to begin with a conventional understanding of ihsan, then deconstruct that conventional understanding in light of Quran and concepts from the Quran, then take us back to something that is similar to the conventional understanding of impact. And at that point, it may look the same from the outside to someone who doesn't know, but it would be completely different for the Muslim who decides to pursue impact from there. So now, typically when we talk about impact, I don't know if you would come in here, Abdul. I don't know if you have some ideas, but what comes to me anyway is something that is known, which can be recognized. So it's probably going to be something that can be quantified, and possibly something that outlives you. Then we can have words like legacy attached to it. Do you think that's a fair a fair
Yeah,
framing of
yeah,
impact?
no,
Okay.
I think so. I think so. If I think back to the past and Muslims of the past, definitely writing books, publishing books, those were all things that people did regularly. They'd have expertise in different fields, things like that. They'd be experts in medicine and physics and philosophy and astronomy and things like that. Yeah, I definitely think doing something that kind of goes beyond you. And
Mm,
for me, especially, is these days it's very easy to get caught up in a corporate structure, 9 to 5, go to work, come back. And it's also very easy to get caught up in working on things that are not even real things. You and
mm,
I, we talk a lot about the financial industry, and there's just a lot of fluff. You can
mm,
end up working on just paper pushing, and you get paid very good money, you get very good promotions. But at the end of the day, what you're doing, it's not even tangible. It's not helping anyone. You're just kind of pushing papers from here to there. You're not really creating any value. In fact, you might even be taking away value. So I think
mm.
it's just the opposite
Yeah.
of things like that.
Okay, that's good. But now, if I were to take us back to what I would consider the more conventional understanding of impact, it would just be just making a name for yourself so that in some way history would record you as having done something and you would go down in history books or in the memories of people that you've done something. What comes to mind is people would say things like many of the philanthropists are impactful people and they have a legacy. There are just some names I don't want to even mention because I don't like
I think
even
I
hearing
know.
their names.
I think yeah.
But yeah, this is what I think would be like a conventional understanding. So now, when we have to subject that understanding to I would say maybe a Quranic understanding, we can ask questions like impact on whom or what, and how does this get answered conventionally? Who or what decides if a lasting impact becomes a legacy?
Mm.
Because you could do all that you can, you could be the hero in your time, and then for one turn of event or one revelation about you, you can be undone. In fact, we've seen that, I think, since the 2008 financial crisis, all the kind of waves of protests we've seen around racism, around Me Too, especially in the European countries. We've seen how the legacy of some people was wiped overnight, right? We have people like, what is it, R. Kelly, and the list goes on, right? Even
Yeah.
Michael Jackson to an extent. So you can see how people play a big part in that. And does it have to be seen and by whom? Another question would be, so basically, ontologically, what action or thing has the property to last or persist so that it can become a legacy? Is it giving someone a drink today, a meal, a building, giving them a house, for example, or giving them shelter for a night? Is it training them in something? Or we can go back to the classic framing of this, which is which one is more impactful, to give a person a fish or to train them on how to fish? Now, the typical conventional understanding is that probably to teach them, to train them on how to fish. But I'm sure that there's probably some nuance around it. Now, from the Quran, we know that every deed outlives you, especially the good deeds. Now, let's look at the part about where your deeds, your actions outlive your life on earth, which is that based on the Quran, the understanding I have is that impact and legacy are a given for everyone. It simply matters whether it is a pleasing or displeasing legacy, right? To God, that is. But just by being human, we are automatically making an impact on the world. The question is just whether it's a good impact or a bad impact. You can make references to the Quran about how the earth remembers, right? Because the earth has consciousness or memory. Your body remembers, Your body is going to testify against you. Your possessions would testify against you. And certainly the angels that accompany you would testify for you or against you. So it's a no-brainer, starting from the Quranic perspective, that we always have an impact. But there's also something interesting, I think, which is that somehow the good impact seems to be in our favor. I know how it's almost as if man's life on earth has been rigged, in quote, to make man leave good impact. For example, when you look at principles like God-pleasing actions persist indefinitely, while displeasing actions can be wiped off or given. So the idea is, whilst we've established that we always leave impact just by the virtue of going through life, it is also interesting, I think, to highlight that generally, or the way God has designed our life to go and the system of accountability is that life has been rigged in our favor so that we're more likely to leave behind good impact rather than the bad impact. So this is where I was referring to the things that Muslims know, almost doctrinal, that God-pleasing actions persist through the likes of Sadaqah Jariyah. Displeasing actions can be wiped or forgiven. You can ask God to forgive you and you can be forgiven. And we even know about how the angel that records your bad deeds delays to make sure and stuff like that. Then also it's that God-pleasing thoughts, for example, can be the lowest impact here in terms of referring to the tradition where the least you can do is to dislike something that is bad, or to think about something good, or to want to aspire to do something good. That itself has an impact because God would be pleased with that. But displeasing thoughts are not impactful unless you act them out. So just because you're having bad thoughts, unless you speak them or you end up committing them, they are not considered something that has an actual impact that would outlive you or go into your record as a human being who's going to be accountable to God. So it seems when you look at these things, it then takes us we get the understanding that the rules have been designed to favor us so that we make good impact in the world. Now, knowing these two, I would say, propositions, that every human being has an impact just by living, and it's easier for you to live good deeds or to have good impact than bad impact. The question then takes us back to, should we then not care about the material outcome? Because we think so much in terms of optimization these days. Effective altruism. I don't know if you're aware of the idea of effective altruism. So the idea of effective altruism is very similar. I think it's all over what we consider conventionally impact today. It's the idea that we want to make the most material outcome or benefit in whatever decisions we do, in our givings, in our altruism and stuff like that. And I find that people also tend to have that type of thinking when it comes to things that would be considered like ibadah. And I'm not saying they're wrong, but because we're at the point where we are deconstructing things, now that we've established that you can just live a life and easily slide and just end up doing good things, just say a good thing here, do a good thing there, maybe just think about good things and don't do bad things, and then you end up in a good place. So the question is then, does it matter whether you give someone fish or show them how to fish? Does it matter at all? There's something we've also talked about, I think, a couple of times, because you and I have been working on zakah and stuff. It's how when people come to distribute their zakah, they seem to not care much about the impact of the zakat. They are more interested in the obligation that they have to give the zakat.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
sometimes they just do it in a very, I would say, it's a very uncoordinated way, where
Yeah.
obviously just want to get rid of the money. So they would say, I've done my part, and they really don't care.
Yeah. No,
So,
I think it's a little more than that because I do agree with you. We've talked about this and I'll come back to it in a bit, but I've done this myself. Like when you're giving, for
mm,
example, now there's a crisis in Sudan, crisis in Yemen. Of course, the Palestinian crisis is still there. So that's like an emotional issue. So you obviously you
mm,
want to give there, but I think what we've discussed, you and I, and there's I think a couple of other people that also talk about this is channeling your zakat to something maybe a little closer to home, programs that are a little closer to home that you can have impact on directly rather than something across the world on the other side of the world. So things like that, yes.
yeah. And even the ones that's more stark for me, and I think more relevant here, is the ones where in Nigeria people would announce that they are giving out their zakah today, and people will just line up in front of their house, like hundreds,
Ah,
maybe like hundreds of people, and then they
yeah.
end up giving them maybe 1,000 naira each.
Mm,
And yeah, then their zakah has been fulfilled, right? So I think the point anyway is that we now need to come to an understanding of where does this leave us if we try to deconstruct what would otherwise conventionally would tell us that it's better to teach people how to fish than
mhm,
to give them fish, right? But since we're trying to deconstruct, at this point in the narrative or in the steps I'm going through now, it would seem the two are not so
mm,
different, especially when we consider like the niyyah and stuff like that,
yeah,
which is that
yeah.
you're doing it sincerely and stuff like that. And to that, I would bring us back to some concepts that are part of our ethical framework as Muslims. Two from the Quran would be Islah and Khilafah. So Islah is basically improvement. It's making things better.
Hmm.
Basically, it's like the good life. What
Hmm.
you do, the action you take to achieve the good life. So one way to present the Quranic mission statement for man is after the centering of God, the belief in God, is to carry out Islah in the world. And so the Quran, for example, contrasts between Islah and Mafsada. Islah, like I said, Islah would be improving, like correcting something that's wrong, but
Hmm.
just making things improve all the time. That would
Hmm.
also be covered within Islah. But then Mafsada would be corruption. And the
Hmm.
Quran is always contrasting these two concepts. So when we say like the messenger of Allah is the Rahmatul lil Alameen, it means he is a means for Islah or a model for Islah for the benefit of all, not just Muslims, for example, right?
Yeah.
Because Islah doesn't discriminate between Muslims or non-Muslims. In a similar way, when you look at Rahmatul lil Alameen, it's almost like a mirror to the Rabbil Alameen, because
Hmm.
Rahmatul lil Alameen would be referring to the Prophet, whereas Rabbil Alameen would be referring to God Himself. These don't contrast, like regardless of what the situation is, the Rahmatul lil Alameen is for all the worlds, not just Muslims, as well as some Rabbil Alameen is for all the worlds. So when you look at Islam, basically spans all the way from like individual improvements to interactive in how we interact with ourselves or amongst ourselves, as well as structural improvements, which would be more something that I think in the spectrum of politics today would be more associated with the left. So Islam would capture all these areas or scopes of improvement. Then we have another one, which is Khilafah from the Quran, which is stewardship of the earth. Now, that definitely requires some form of material outcome, just as Islah does. We are not trying to say, oh, just be a good person, do your adhkar, do your ibadah. By ibadah, I mean like the ritual activities. No, you have to actually engage with creation.
Mm.
Khilafah, in this sense, is basically stewardship of earth. And one way to also look at, because these are just different framings of understanding our purpose or our direction. So if you were to ask about the why of creation, of human creation, you would say it's ibadah, in the sense that we want to revere, we want to know, we want to connect, to worship God. But that is like a vertical why. This is between human and God. But if you were to
Mm-hmm.
ask for the horizontal why, it
Mm-hmm.
would be Khilafah, to
Mm-hmm.
deputize for God and earth, between
Mm-hmm.
human and creation in general, right? And this is one of the treasures that man has, and has also lifted man above other creation, which is that he's Khalifatun fil ard, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the angels, this is probably what the angels could not understand.
Mm-hmm.
The conversation between the angels
Mm-hmm.
and God in the Quran at the creation of man. So you
Okay.
see, then another thing I think we could explore in like the tradition and the seerah, it's surprising to me how Muslims, at least in Nigeria, just have very little effort or conception of khidmah, yet they have of da'wah. But da'wah has always been a twin, like one of two, right? It's da'wah and khidmah. And so you do da'wah to call people, to proselytize or invite people, but you do khidmah to serve humanity. No, actually, not just humanity, to serve creation. So khidmah just means service. You would see, I think khidmah is a big part of the Catholic Church. This is why you would see them have setting up schools and doing a lot outside of the church. But these are all concepts, coming back to what I was saying about whether giving someone a fish and teaching them to fish is materially the same thing or doesn't really matter in terms of our ibadah or our impact, rather. So we have these concepts, Islah, Khilafah, and Khidmah, that basically tell us otherwise. Material outcome is actually very important. Now, a theological point here would be, we know that we don't have the final say. We don't have control over material outcome in the world, but that's besides the point, because this is where morality comes in. Morality is not about the outcome of what you do so much as the ability to take certain decisions and actions and do them sincerely, obviously, because you have to do them believing it would happen, given that God has given us certain rules that we know would lead to certain outcomes. So we do that knowing this. So given what I've said now, you can start to see an alignment between the conventional understanding of impact and the Quranic
Mm-hmm.
understanding, or how I
Yes. Yes.
understand it from a Quranic perspective. This means that people, when it comes to legacy, really from the Quranic perspective, it's really determined by our sincerity or intentionality, regardless of whether people champion it or it persists in the real world or
Mm-hmm.
in people's day to day after
Mm-hmm.
we pass away. It actually could just be there because of our intentions, our sincerity towards that, and it's with God. We
Mm-hmm.
don't know that. And it also limits how much people, or the opinion of people, on what a good legacy
Mm-hmm.
is actually, because they
Okay.
can only speculate up to a point.
Yeah. Okay. So this is a great
Before your next
takeaway.
question,
Yeah.
can I tie it down to something? Because just having thought about impact as one of the pillars of Muhsinaire, it then made me realize that perhaps there can be a way to reframe the Muhsinaire pillars. So typically, I think you present it as faith, family, impact.
Yes.
But having gone through this, it seems to me, if there's an order to it, it can be reframed as faith, impact, family. Because with faith, this is where you're connecting to God. That was probably the first episode we had. You can have your intention there, your sincerity, and understand the why, your servitude, your submission to God. Then on the level of impact, this is where we look at Islah, we look at Khidmah, we look at the mission, and this is where we have the opportunity and potential for Ihsan.
Yes.
Then we come to family, and family would be like the first circle of influence for impact and ihsan. Yeah, I
Hmm.
thought I should just mention that.
So some of the things you're talking about here, this is a bit
Mm,
of a tangent, but like one of the things I'm like, one day I need to sit down and just all of these buzzwords and productivity hacks and there's all these are all they're not new concepts and we have them in our tradition. So you talk about the concept of Islah, and that to me just reminded me of like continuous improvement in project
mhm,
management and Six Sigma and things like that. So that's a
mm,
whole conversation. But one day I think I want to just come out and map out all these things to be like, okay, this maps to that, this maps to this. But
yeah,
okay, so back to what you were saying about reframing the Muhsinaire pillars. So sometimes
mm,
I think you might hear us in some episodes sometimes even say something like, how do we maximize impact in faith and impact in family and
mm,
impact in wealth, for example. So I do agree with you,
mm,
like they're all related and you can reframe it in that way.
mm,
So, my
mm,
takeaway from this question, which ironically, I think the next question I'll ask you might go against that a little bit. But my takeaway from this here is you can worry about the actions, the deeds, but it's almost as if the legacy, you need to worry about that from the perspective of what's your legacy with God rather than what's your legacy in this life. Does your name live on in are you memorialized in as we have a statue? Do you have a company? Do you have a road named after you or things like that? Because as we know, politicians have a lot of things named after them.
mm,
Might not have the best legacy when it comes to the the akhirah
mhm,
and with Allah. So it's almost as if you just worry about doing the good deeds, continuous improvement, Islah and stewardship, Khalifa, as you mentioned, Khilafah. And whether it's giving someone a fish today or teaching them how to fish, like you just do whatever good you can every single time. It's almost a little bit of that's what I'm taking away from this conversation that it's not like a binary thing. You can do a bit of this, a bit of that. So, yeah, that's very interesting to me. And I think that's a very
mhm.
powerful idea of just don't worry about the legacy of this world, worry about your legacy with Allah. And as you said, our tradition and Allah always says that He's setting us up for success, right? So your good legacy will almost live on even despite your efforts against it, whereas it's the opposite with your with the bad things that you do, like very easily they can be wiped from your record. Okay.
And to your point here, I think another thing to add to what you said is that having the worldly legacy within your scope may actually, it's actually quite, what's the word I'm looking for? Pollutes your intention and your sincerity because you then have to worry about, what do we say? To refine your intention. You have
Mhm.
to like constantly do it. If you are on the forefront and you're doing things that would give you accolade with people, then
Mhm.
you actually have to worry extra hard about not giving into that so that you keep your intentions sincere and focused on God rather than the accolades and everything. So, if anything, a certain type of or aiming for a certain type of legacy can actually undermine the truly lasting legacy that we should all be seeking as Muslims.
Okay. So now moving on to the second question, in light of what we've talked about in the first part here, surely there must be a
Mm,
way to maximize some of that
mm,
impact, right? Like, even if you are
mm,
fully concerned about the hereafter and your legacy with God, but do you feel Muslims today are living up to their potential in building legacy and impact? Surely we should be also concerned about how do we maximize the material impact, or should we just not worry about it and just do whatever good that we can and not worry about channeling the effort in one way or another
mm.
as an ummah?
Yeah, so I think we have to do that. And I hope I was able to make that point in the first section that we circle back, we try to deconstruct the conventional way of understanding legacy and impact. But then by the time we come back and we're faced with Islah, and Khilafah, then we then have to confront that. We need to actually strategize and try to make the most impact. It is no accident that we have concepts like Sadaqah Jariyah, and we have one of the things that have consistently, perpetually, I would say, during the certain centuries carried on the Muslim society has been the awqaf, which are like trusts that are set up as or basically sadaqah jariyah, right? Because it solves this alignment problem where on the one hand you want to have good deeds or goodness happening that you have a share in even after you live. Because when you think about it, the point of living is just knowing God and pleasing God. So what if even after you're turned off, you're not walking on earth, you keep on pleasing God due to something that you have done that persists. So that is one goal. But the other goal is that it's of benefit to society. You are going for things that can sustain themselves financially so that they can keep on providing benefits to the society, which can range all the way from soup kitchens to hospitals to schools to masajid to other institutions. So yeah, definitely it's part of what we should be doing. In fact, I would go as far as to say that would be an indication of how sincere your intentions are. Because if, for example, you have the capacity to strategize to make someone who is hungry today not be hungry by making some effort or putting in some effort so that they won't be hungry in a sense. Instead of giving them fish, giving them, let's say, 20 portions of fish, why not give them 5 portions and in that 5 days or during the time they consume those 5 portions, you teach them how to fish with the resources or by selling the other 15
Yeah.
fish.
So actually, this is
If
a
you
good point because it sounds to me like this, especially in this example here, it's you're going beyond just because you're a little more invested. So you're a little more invested in the well-being of this person in this hypothetical scenario. So it's very easy to just give the 20 fish and move on, right? But
yeah,
it takes a little bit more effort, more thinking, more
yeah,
planning on your side to say, okay, I'm worried, I really care about your long-term well-being.
yeah.
I'll do this, a bit of this, and then
Mhm.
also help you do that.
Yeah, because the easy way out is just to dish out money, dish out resources, and then wait for them to ask again, and not
Mm-hmm.
really to put them at the back of your mind when they're hungry after the 20 days. It's, oh, sorry, I can't do anything. So it takes more from you. It takes
Mm-hmm.
more of your time, more of your thinking, more of your resources, and some perhaps even more of your resources, actually. So
Mm-hmm.
that for me, it's tied to sincerity because sincerity itself is it's not a wish. Sincerity is it has to translate into action.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, given the opportunity for the action to take place and you don't, then that's literally hypocrisy.
I'm curious about the awqaf as well. Would that be an in between? Because if you don't know what to do, you could just donate money to the awqaf. You could just, your zakat goes there. So you're still being hands off, but awqaf is there to do those big projects, to solve those big problems, to be that thing that lives on and continues to do good on the behalf of everyone. So, do you have examples of that? I know we've talked about awqaf in the past.
Mm.
Is that kind of a way to be in between?
Yeah, so I think that's a really good one, right? Because I haven't thought about it that way, but it seems like it's a good in between. Because you see, there are times when it can be an in between, and there are times when it can just be a cop out as well.
Mm,
So let's say you have an awqaf running. This awqaf is not really running efficiently, not so much efficiently. It may not, it may even be a way for some form of money laundering. Anything can happen.
yeah, yeah.
It could be like a way to make people feel good that they are donating to something. Yet, if you were to put in some effort, you would figure out that they're not really running the place properly. Maybe you should give it to something else. So this research that you need to do to figure out what needs require your resources or this and that, all that coordination, I think is what you need to do. Now, if, for example, that there's someone who there's an awqaf or there's let's say a charity that already that doesn't have any question mark that you are confident in, then by all means, I think it does that function in that case. It does the in-between thing where instead of just giving someone money to do something, for example, that may not even be something of an emergency, you are, in a sense, delegating or trusting that they have the expertise. And by them having the expertise, in a sense, you're also paying them potentially for their service. And you're saying, okay, take a bit of this, and I trust you can do the research. I trust you are in touch with people who are in need. I trust you know more about what's happening in the community and who needs what. I trust you serve as a good buffer so that when one of my neighbors has a need and they feel heavy to come to me directly, they know they can go to you because there is some form of confidentiality. I trust this. So I think it could work, but I can also see a situation where it can be abused or
Actually, I want to move the conversation now a little bit. We've talked about things like Sadaqah Jariyah and just like charity and volunteering and that kind of, we've talked about things like that, but I'm very curious to talk about impact and legacy when it comes to corporate skills and training and studying, things like that. Because I touched on this a little bit, right? I started to feel at some point that I'm just playing in this corporate world, and what exactly am I doing? Most of my time is just going towards these meetings and this company or that company, and it just felt weird. So, do you have any thoughts around impact and legacy when it comes to things that we would consider work in this day and age, like studies and work? What do you think about that?
So I think going back to the first session we had, when it comes to impact, we're primarily talking about ibadah in a sense, or service to God. And at the core of ibadah is your intention, your niyyah. An extension of the niyyah is sincerity. And this is where the hypocrites and the non-hypocrites are. By hypocrites, by the way, I don't mean like the Medinan hypocrites at the time during the Sirah, right? I just mean hypocrites in the English sense of the word, like someone who would say one thing or believe one thing and do something else, right? So what we know is that anything can be impactful if it centers God. Anything, literally, is ibadah. If you frame it and you understand it as serving God. Now, if you go into your workplace and think primarily about how you can serve yourself, you can climb up the hierarchy, the corporate ladder, and maybe do good things or whatever it is, just then you, to a large extent, you may not be centering God, right? Of course, I'm not in a position to judge. I can only talk about these things conceptually. But someone who centers God, and by centering God, again, doesn't just mean to say to yourself, I intend to do this to please God. No. And this is where you have to walk the talk or walk the thought, I think, because you have to actually have plans, need to have plans to understand what it is you're doing. For someone, it could be impactful simply because they see it as a means to serve God by providing for their family. That itself is impactful to an extent. For someone, it can be bigger than that and all of that. But it really comes down to how you frame it and how much God is centered in whatever ambitions you have. I think that's what makes it impactful and at the end of the day. But like I said, just centering God means you have to be sincere. You have to literally take the actions you need to take and not cower away from doing the right thing or the things you need to do at certain times. So when you do that, it's all about the framing, and then framing it literally just centers God. I think anything can be impactful in that sense.
Okay, so I still think I need a succinct answer to the question
Okay.
because the question
Okay.
originally was, do you feel like Muslims are living up to their potential today in legacy and impact?
Oh, succinct, no.
No?
But
So,
if you
but
want me to
why
say,
not? Why not then?
yeah.
A
So
lot of the things you've talked
even
about here are very personal and they're based on
mm,
intention. But of course, we see the outcomes. So, is that the reason why
uh-huh.
you say?
Yeah, because the thing is, like I said, intention itself. So maybe I should stop saying using the word intention and just say sincerity, because intention is not, it's not just a thought. It has to translate into action. This is perhaps why, if there are constraints, why an intention does not materialize into action, God takes it as if you've done the action. It's
Hmm.
still pleasing to God, because only when God knows that you would have truly done the thing you wish to do or you have thought about doing in your intention, right? So when we take these things seriously, the intention and sincerity and how it always leads to action, then we're actually going to see a lot of impact in the world. For example, now, I gave you my succinct answer to say no, but the question is, how do you know what people are thinking, right? I
Hmm.
don't know what people are thinking, but you know what? I know, being part of this society, is that I know that even when we have Muslims, when we say we take, let's say we take a poll of how many Muslims are in certain industries or CEOs or are doing good according to whatever, according to today's like consumerist capitalist culture, you would see that we can identify Muslims, but it's not a very useful way to think about it, because what I see us doing in that sense is we consider Muslim as a tribe member. So someone who is from the tribe of the Muslims. Instead, what we should do is we should look for Muslims as fellow in value systems, like partners in a shared value system. Because when these people in with such achievements carry on with their activities, you don't see the Islam in it, right? You don't see that they are bringing in a different value system, for example. This is why, just based on this, my observation, I would say no. But I
Hmm.
think it's because we haven't really thought about it. So if we think about it and we take it seriously in how we do things, I think it would show. There
Hmm.
would always be an impact. It never ends with a thought. There's
Yeah.
always an action.
And where would you say this shows up the most? Is it in the Khilafah? We're not good custodians of the earth, for example, because we're just not, there's no restraint in how we do, especially like resources and waste and things like that? Or do you think there's an area where this really shows up the most?
Wow. I think it's in everything, really. I haven't thought about it, but I would probably just say everything, because
Mhm.
you see, Khilafah and Islah, they're so encompassing and they overlap, obviously. It's just like the perspective you're looking at them from. But because many Muslims, for example, if you talk to them about, and this is anecdotal, but I don't think we need a study to establish this. When you talk to Muslims about Islah, some of them have never even heard the concept. Of course, not knowing the concept itself doesn't mean they don't understand it in other ways, right?
Mhm.
May understand it in other means because we're all from the same like moral system,
Mhm.
morality and stuff, but that we haven't given it the attention it requires,
Mhm.
that we haven't given Khilafah the attention it requires, that when we think of Khalifa or Khilafah, we're thinking about the rulers of the
Mhm.
Muslim empire, right, in the past,
Mhm.
right? That is such a disservice to these Quranic concepts. So I think we need to foreground them, show how important they are, show that our, in a sense, ibadah, the ritual aspects of our ibadah, is to prepare us to do these things because we need to take action in the world. It's like the moral, the action space, the moral
Mhm.
ground. This is where you show that you are Muslims, not that you believe you are Muslims. You have to show. That's why it's always, you hear, it's always in the Quran, these things are always paired, the two references to those who believe and those who spend of what they have been given
Mhm.
in the path of God and stuff like that. Yeah.
So I think this is a very good segue to my next question. Let me see if I can tease this out from you. So the question is, if you could encourage Muslims to start one habit or project today that would ripple and build towards the impact and
Mm.
legacy that we've been talking about, what would it be?
I think the most obvious one, but non-trivial, would to improve on ourselves, improve our character, actually. I think that's the starting point. We need to improve our character. We should strive to be better than ourselves from last year. And when we do that, it's basically the sunnah. We're trying to emulate our model of what a complete human being is, which is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. To an extent, I think even structures that are supposed to easily get these things done, like arrangements in tasawwuf, I'm not sure if many of them, the tasawwuf, I'm not sure if many of them focus on the building of character. I know certainly they are trying to get close to God and they are purifying their selves. I'm not sure how much attention is paid to character itself.
Sorry, could
And
you just
some of these
translate
things.
that tasawwuf tariqa? This.
Oh, okay, sorry. So tasawwuf, or rather tariqah, is they would be like a school of teaching tasawwuf. And tasawwuf itself is a way or a path of attaining ihsan, which is interesting, right? It's ultimately that's what tasawwuf is, but it has been understood differently. So for some people, it's about getting close to God through adhkar, and I think most through remembrance of God and always foregrounding God in everything you do. So many of the schools, which is the tariqah literally just means a way to something. So there are different ways to achieve a common
Mm-hmm.
goal.
Mm-hmm.
And tasawwuf is what we call the Sufis or Sufism or Sufis, yeah. So these are just different schools. And I think, oh, the point I was making is I think they probably put in a lot of effort on spiritual cleansing and to the extent that it affects character, I wouldn't know how much effort they put into that. But I think that's something we need to do. Now, when we strive to improve our character, it has some of the effects I mentioned earlier because we move away from good character is not just to have good intentions, it's to take action. It gives us courage, and courage
Mm-hmm.
is one of the characters we need to improve towards because
Mm-hmm.
if there's one thing we can strive that's common to all the prophets and messengers in the Quran, it's that courage to stand on what is right, on what is
Mm-hmm.
right. So improving your character would be that, and eventually that would trickle into how subsequent generations would begin, being that I have empathy for the framing of politics from like the left of the political scale. I know this sounds, maybe this needs a bit of an explanation when I say it's almost like I'm saying the responsibilities on the individual. Yeah, I think it starts with the individual. And I think when we have enough action, it can lead and people with courage, then our Islah can go, like I said, from the individual space or scope up to the structural level where things can become easier. It's like someone said about someone I think was complaining about how difficult it is to be a Muslim today with all the temptation and all the things you have to not do this and that. And they were saying, how can you live up to the standard of people, Muslims in the past, who were doing amazing things? They just had a good iman. They didn't have to second guess what they were doing and this and this and that. And the response that came to him from someone who I believe probably is a scholar said they had it so easy. And as far as like pleasing God is concerned, you living today may be doing better than them because of all the struggles you have to go through, right? What you have to go through and stuff like that. So my point is that it took the early Muslims to show character, to set up institutions and culture that makes it easy for people to become Muslims and not struggle. So I think that is something that building character would lead to. And eventually, the good character can perhaps just become something we, in a word, inherit, quote unquote, from our parents. Because when they themselves are good in terms of their character, that's the best way to pick up good character, not by instruction. It's by
Mm-hmm.
seeing people around you have a good character. And then the changes would, I believe, it would be like an avalanche of change. It would
Mm-hmm.
just keep on snowballing, like just it going bigger and bigger, inshallah. So that's how I think about it anyway. It starts with you, goes to
Mm-hmm.
your children and people around you, and eventually we'll see that impact in the community at a societal level and
Mm-hmm.
ummah wide level, inshallah.
So I think maybe the last thing I'd try and get out from you is something tangible in terms of how to go about improving character, because it does
Mm,
sound very idealistic, quite broad,
mm.
and but what are the things that we could do just a little bit here and there? I know we've talked about like focusing on the humanities. Is it reading books? Is it, what do you have any specific tidbits of advice around how to actually go about doing this?
Okay, something I've been thinking about recently is two things, simple instructions that we can use to provide children with something to build their character and just basically tell them this is what a good person should do. If you were to ask, what should a good person do? This is what a good person should do. And on this, I looked into a few things. For example, the 40 ahadith, the collection, is supposed to be used for tarbiyah. That was why he extracted the 40 from the larger volume that he had compiled. And I've gone through it. It's not quite what I was looking for. It has its value, and as of course, he is covering a lot of things. He is covering your iman, so it's going all the way from doctrine to a bit of character and stuff. But the first thing I want to do is to compile or collate rather than compile, because I've already seen it compiled in some places. So I just want to bring them together and just work on like filtering them, or just, yeah, a second look at them. Are all the simple instructions that are in the Quran. Because when I came across the works that have in some way compiled them for academic reasons or something like that, it seems we don't quite try to follow these things. They're just very like simple stuff, right? Do this, don't do this. Be the person who does this, who forgives when they can, right? It's better for you to forgive. It's better to do this. Be the one who does this and stuff like that. So I think we can compile that and just give it to people and almost present it similar to what is done in like the self-help world. I'm sure we can probably take some points from the self-help world where you take maybe 3 character traits every month and see how much you can do, or maybe every year and just keep a scorecard on how well you're doing towards that. The next year you add something to yourself. Maybe we can do all of that. That's one. The other one, I think, is just to really read the seerah and understand the prophet. I keep coming back to stories, the power of stories. I think when you understand the prophet, then you can ask yourself in situations what the prophet would do. There's this quote, what is it? Stickers they have. What would Jesus do?
Oh my God.
So
Wait, I need to say something here. Did you sent this to me, right? Oh my God. It was horrible. They
yeah.
built an app, an AI app
Oh,
that basically you can chat with Jesus, subhanallah.
yeah. Yeah.
And the like the person who built the app is on record saying he's
hmm
not even religious. And of course
Yeah.
the picture of Jesus they have is like this very white dude.
The white
It was,
blonde,
I'm like,
blue eyes.
it is
Yeah.
messed up on so many levels.
Yeah.
But I know
And you
it's
see,
going
this
to
is
be
how
very popular.
capitalism co-opts
It's going to
religion.
be very
Apparently it
popular.
is. Apparently it's
Oh
very
yeah,
popular already. Yeah. Apparently it is. And this is how
yes.
capitalism finds a way to co-opt anything
Mhm.
good.
So I don't,
So yeah.
this is very interesting because like you are very much of the opinion that improvement starts from within and then we will benefit from all the externalities it would manifest in the outcomes we see in the world, basically. So
Mm.
that's where you are. Okay. Because I have some opinions on this, and I'm like, oh, all Muslims should really always just start businesses. We shouldn't be employees only. We should strive to build things so that we can have like our own ecosystems and our own infrastructure. But I do think you are right. If it starts with internal improvement, and that improvement in character will manifest in the courage to take on risky ventures because of the outcome, and because of we don't want to risk our faith and our values and our principles. The story that I always go back to is like the creation of the of algebra, and the reason
Yeah.
behind it being to help with zakat calculations. So I think that's the kind of outcome that
I think it's
yeah,
for inheritance.
inheritance, yes, yes,
Inheritance, yeah.
inheritance,
Yeah.
yes.
Mm. Yeah.
So
So
when did you become such a, I don't know, a philosopher or a deep, I don't know, because like you're saying
of what?
everything we've got to do is just we focus on improving the self, and all of
Oh
these
no, no, no,
things
no.
will
Not
care of
saying because
themselves.
no, I think that's okay. So I think I need to clarify. I'm definitely not on that. In fact, I would say the way I would couch it is that we start by improving ourselves. For
Hmm.
example, take the example you gave. We need Muslim businesses, we need Muslim platforms, we need this and that. So what I am saying is you can have a Muslim business and a Muslim
Ah,
platform tribally, right?
yes, yes,
Because
yes.
you haven't, it might as well not be a Muslim. It
Yeah,
doesn't really matter that it's a Muslim that owns it
yeah,
in that sense.
yeah, yeah.
But when you have someone who is reflecting the value system of Islam in their
Mhm.
businesses and their platforms, then we have something we can count. For me, the other one doesn't count because
Yeah,
whether it's a Muslim or not, it's immaterial. It's
yeah,
just a service to me.
yeah, yeah. No, that makes
And
sense.
in fact, sometimes you also end up with non-Muslim businesses and platforms are actually have more in line or the Muslim value system,
Yeah,
or what I would say
yeah,
the Quranic value system, than what the Muslims would be doing.
yeah,
So for me, it's that's the only reason why I'm not
yeah. That makes sense actually,
like
because
a pacifist
just
or
yeah,
pushing responsibility away. I'm just saying start from let's do our
yes.
homework first before we enter and
Okay,
try
yeah,
to
that
change
makes
the
sense
world.
because yes, just having Muslim in name platforms is not going to change
Mm,
anything. It's just going to be more of the same.
yeah.
Okay, so I think we'll round out with maybe focusing a little bit on you to finish off. What is it that you are working on right now, big or small, that's kind of exciting you in this realm of impact and legacy? Do you have any projects or any works that you'd want to share?
Yes, since we're sharing a few things I'm excited about. Interestingly, I had a meeting today about one of them. And I realize I start the same way when someone asks me, so what are you working on? I say, okay, do you mean what am I working on for money or what am I not
Mm-hmm.
working for money? Because I probably spend more of my time these days working on things that's not for money.
Alhamdulillah, it's a
And
blessing.
but
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah that we are able to afford to even do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I'll mention two. One is Quran hacking, like hacking so hacking like in English, but then HAQQING, like
Mm-hmm.
hacking. Yeah. So that the project is basically, rather the bold claim of the project is that you can engage with the Quran on a deep level and on different levels without the need for advanced classical Arabic. So that's the claim. And I have so many things around that to prove that and get people on board. So it's really about how to engage with the Quran. But maybe that's discussion for another time or when I don't know. I don't know if we have time here. In fact, one of the meetings I had today is with someone who after the meeting said, you know what, I'm interested in this and I need you to do something about it. So now he has me accountable. I
What
have
what
to do
format will this
something.
take? What format will it take? Is it a book? Is it
Okay, so
an app? What is it?
okay. So it's going to be a seminar,
Mm-hmm.
inshallah. This one is the first one is going to be a seminar, and we're planning to early days now, but it's probably going to be in person to get people into the idea that they can actually have a good relation, like a deep relationship, a
Mm-hmm.
personal relationship with the Quran without the need for advanced classical Arabic. So
Mm-hmm.
there are different ways to go through it. There are like three levels. One I would call the first level is the level of I've forgotten the name now, but it's basically like the syntactic level where you are trying to be familiar with the Quran by engaging with it on, say, memorization would fall under that, but also learning to read it in Arabic would
Mm-hmm.
be that. And I've the tool I created as well that, oh, sorry, that's by the way. So
No,
you would have
you should mention
all,
that.
okay, so you would have all the ways you interact with the Quran, almost just with a little flair of innovation, but that you would do traditionally. So you would read the Quran or you would memorize it. But the idea is, okay, can you use tools like Memory Palace, for example, to situate the Quran and have a mind map, not a mind map as the diagram, but a map in your mind or a model of the Quran so that you just know certain things are somewhere. What is the image of the Quran that you have in your head,
Mm-hmm.
as well as how to read the Quran? So innovative ways to learn how to read. The tool I mentioned now is an app in the works, which I've abandoned for a few weeks now. But it's with my daughter, teaching her the Quran, and I figured how she had some problems in with understanding how words in Arabic don't end their sounds at the end of a word, for example. So that became something difficult for her. And then I thought, okay, what if I can create a tool that can highlight the Quran, the words in the Quran to show her the connections and stuff like that. That's something in the works. There's the second level of Quran hacking, which is the analysis level, where we engage with like literature. This is how you would engage with literature. So a lot of like literary devices are used there. And you don't need to like learn the whole set of literary devices or how to think deeply about certain things. It's something that you can be taught as a skill, within maybe an hour, especially if you have an undergraduate degree, or yeah, I think undergraduate degree would be better, or maybe even you're done with secondary school. But how it becomes polished is just based on practice, right? So we can show you how the Quran can be understood deeper by engaging with it as you would a literature or work of literature. Then the third level would be the expression level, where whatever transformation the Quran gives you, whatever insights you learn from the Quran, you should find ways to express it. You could just talk to people about it, have discussions about it. You could write a blog post, you could tweet, you could make an artwork, you could make a spoken word, a song, you could do all sorts of things, right? You could even have a fashion design inspired by something like that. So that's another level of engagement. So these are like all in the works, but the first thing I think we're likely going to be doing soon would be on that second level. On that, actually, that one would be on like pop culture. So I'm excited about that one, but I won't say much here now. The second thing we are working on, this is you and I, it's to do with zakah. And yeah, I know I've been delaying you. I know I'm the one. It's just we are. So this is a long story, but the app, left to you, the app is ready basically right now. But it's just that I ended up complicating the process by deciding to write a book on zakah. And now it has been ready for a year now, but I haven't come round to really doing the extra work to get it published. And that's what's holding us back, because we want to publish the book so that the app really matches whatever things we end up changing at the point of publishing, so that we don't roll out an app and then have to change one or two logic in it.
Okay, so this was great. Alhamdulillah, thank you. And yeah, we'll catch you on the next one then.
Yeah, inshallah. Thank you for having me.
From our family to yours, thank you for being here. This journey of Ihsan is not one that we can take alone, so let's keep learning together, inshallah. If you enjoyed the podcast, please give it a rating and share it with your friends and family and anyone you know who might be interested.
Subscribe to the podcast. Join us at muhsinaire.com to continue the conversation. Until then, may your days be full of barakah. Assalamu alaikum.